The law office, with its heavy mahogany paneling, felt oppressive as I sat waiting for Grandpa Richard's will to be read. Across from me, Catherine sat perfectly composed in her designer suit, offering me occasional glances of fox concern that never quite reached her eyes. "Poor Julia," she murmured loudly to her mother. "She really should be in a care facility, not dealing with all this stress." I clenched my leather satchel tighter, trying to suppress the anger bubbling inside. For months, Catherine had been building a narrative that I was mentally unstable and incapable of managing my own life, simply because I chose to help run Grandpa's antique restoration business rather than pursuing a more respectable career, like her corporate law practice. "She has a gaming addiction," she told family members during gatherings, her voice dripping with insincerity. "Julia spends all her time playing with old computers in Grandpa's workshop. She needs help, not an inheritance to squander." What she called gaming was actually my work, preserving vintage electronics, a specialty that had doubled the shop's revenue over the past few years. But Catherine never bothered to understand that. The family lawyer, Mr. Harrison, finally entered, holding a thick envelope. "Thank you all for coming," he said, adjusting his glasses. "We're here to read the last will and testament of Richard James Montgomery." Catherine straightened up, flashing a confident smile. She'd spent months convincing Grandpa to update his will before his sudden heart attack. I had overheard her more than once, pushing him to protect Julia from herself. "To my dear granddaughter, Catherine," Mr. Harrison began, who has always understood the value of traditional success. I tuned out the list of assets being passed to Catherine, watching her grin grow wider with every mention of her inheritance. Our parents nodded approvingly. They always favored Catherine's clear ambition. "And to my granddaughter Julia," Mr. Harrison continued. Catherine's expression shifted to one of smug satisfaction. "I leave my antique restoration business, workshop, and all its contents." "How fitting," Catherine sneered. "The broken things for the broken sister." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "There is also a sealed letter for Julia to be opened privately." With trembling hands, I took the envelope, ignoring Catherine's exaggerated sigh. "Is that all?" she asked, frowning. "The business can't be worth much." "Actually," a new voice interrupted from the doorway. "That depends on what you think is valuable." We all turned to see an elderly Asian gentleman stepping into the room. His expensive suit and commanding presence immediately drew everyone's attention. "James Chin," he introduced himself, nodding to Mr. Harrison. "Richard's business partner. I believe it's time to explain what young Julia has really inherited." Catherine's smile faltered. "Business partner. Grandpa never mentioned him." "No," Mr. Chin replied with a faint smile, "he wouldn't have. Just as he never mentioned that the antique shop was a cover for our real business." He turned to me. "Julia, dear, have you opened your grandfather's letter yet?" With shaking hands, I tore open the envelope and began to read. "My dearest Julia, if you're reading this, then James has arrived right on time. While everyone thought I was just tinkering with relics, James and I were actually building something extraordinary. Those vintage computers you've been restoring, they maintain technology that was decades ahead of its time. Patents that were buried, innovations hidden away until now. You saw what others missed while they called you broken. You were learning, preserving crucial pieces of technological history." My vision blurred as I read on, the weight of the words sinking in. When I looked up, Catherine's confident facade had vanished. Grandpa's letter wasn't just about the past, it was about the future, and that future was about to change everything. "Impossible," Catherine whispered, staring at the documents Mr. Chin had laid out on the table. "These patents, these contracts, they're worth approximately $2.8 billion. Mr. Chin finished calmly. "Your grandfather and I spent 40 years acquiring and safeguarding technological innovations that were ahead of their time, innovations that are only now becoming viable." I sat in stunned silence, still processing Grandpa's letter. The vintage computers I had been restoring weren't just antiques. They were prototypes, each one containing designs and schematics for technologies that had been decades ahead of their time. "But the shop," my mother interjected weakly, "it was just an old, dusty storefront." "The perfect cover," Mr. Chin said with a smile. "Who would suspect that behind those shelves of radios and typewriters, we were preserving the future of quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and renewable energy?" Catherine's lawyer, Mr. K, finally cracked. "This is absurd. Julia can't possibly manage this kind of technology. She's unstable. She needs. Needs what? Mr. Chin cut in sharply. The same help you've insisted she needs since she started working with Richard, he continued. Tell me, Miss Montgomery, in your expert legal opinion, what's the difference between quantum entanglement and quantum superposition? Catherine's mouth opened and closed in silence. Julia, Mr. Chin turned to me. Would you explain the principle behind the quantum processing core you restored last month? Taking a deep breath, I launched into a detailed explanation of the technology, watching Catherine's face drain of color with each word. All those hours she dismissed as playing with old computers had actually been advanced engineering work. That's why Richard chose you, Mr. Chin said softly when I finished. While others saw broken machines, you saw the hidden pattern. You understood the code. But the inheritance? Catherine finally managed, her voice high-pitched. The paperwork we filed about Julia's competency was rejected this morning. Mr. Harrison slid a new document across the table. The judge was quite interested in Miss Montgomery's recent patent applications. Now I was the one who was surprised. Patent applications? Mr. Chin nodded. Your improvements to the quantum core design. Richard submitted them in your name before he died. They're already being reviewed by major tech companies. Catherine stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. I'll contest the will. You what? I asked quietly, finally finding my voice. Tell everyone how you tried to have me declared incompetent to steal my inheritance. How you manipulated Grandpa in his final months. How you lied to the entire family about my mental state. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Catherine's voice was crystal clear, planning with her lawyer to have me committed. I have more, I said. Grandpa always emphasized the importance of keeping detailed records. Mother gasped. Dad, who had been silent until that point, buried his face in his hands. Just 20 minutes ago, Mr. Chen interjected calmly. Our legal team filed a countersuit against Miss Montgomery for attempted fraud and defamation. The damages, including the technology's value, could be significant. Catherine's face drained of color. Her perfectly built facade was beginning to collapse, and she knew it. However, I said, surprising even myself, there might be another path forward. Everyone turned to me as I opened my laptop and displayed a complicated organizational chart. Grandpa and Mr. Chin didn't just leave me patents, I continued. They left me a blueprint for how this technology should be utilized. To make that vision a reality, we'll need lawyers who understand both tech and ethics. Catherine's eyes widened as she realized what I was suggesting, a way forward, though not the one she had in mind. The decision is yours, I went on. You can fight us in court and risk everything, or you can join us in reshaping the world, this time as equals. Mr. Chen smiled with approval but added, of course, there would be terms, strict oversight, and mandatory psychological evaluations for Catherine. I finished, just to ensure she's fit to handle such responsibility. The irony was clear to everyone in the room. The next 6 months changed everything. The dusty old shop became the public face of Montgomery Tech Innovations, while the back workshop turned into a state-of-the-art research facility. Every obsolete vintage computer I had restored now stood in a museum-quality display, each representing a breakthrough yet to be revealed. The quantum processing patents alone are valued at $4 billion now, Mr. Chen reported one morning, reviewing our latest valuation. And that's not including the potential AI applications. I nodded, watching through the one-way mirror as Catherine gave a tour to prospective investors. My sister had surprised everyone, including herself, by excelling in her new role as our legal ethics officer. Perhaps because, for the first time, she was building something instead of just acquiring it. The neural interface team is integrating your feedback, she said, joining us after the tour. Gone were the designer suits and condescending tone. Today she wore business casual and actually carried a technical manual under her arm. They discovered something intriguing in Grandpa's old notes. Show me, I replied, following her to the research floor. Our relationship wasn't fully healed, too much had been broken for that. But we had found a new form of respect, one based on real achievements instead of appearances. Grandpa's pride and joy had been the neural interface lab, though he had disguised it as a radio repair shop. Now it stood at the cutting edge of human-computer interaction research. Take a look at this. Catherine pointed to a series of schematics. Grandpa predicted neural networking applications that the technology is just starting to develop. But there's something else. She hesitated before pulling out an old photograph. It showed Grandpa and Mr. Chin, much younger, standing with a group of scientists, including our grandmother, who died before we were born. She was part of this too, Catherine said quietly. All those stories about her being just a housewife, Mom and Dad never knew she was actually a quantum physicist. They never asked, I said, studying the photo. Just like they never asked what we were capable of. They assumed. I did worse than assume, Catherine admitted. I actively tried to suppress your abilities because I was envious. I looked at her in surprise. Jealous of what? Of your bond with Grandpa. How easily you understood things I struggled with. It was easier to dismiss you as broken than to admit you might be special. Before I could respond, Mom and Dad arrived for their weekly visit. They too had changed, humbled by the realization of how wrong they'd been about everything. We brought lunch, Mom said, holding up bags from our favorite deli. If you're not too busy revolutionizing the tech world, would you care to eat with your parents over sandwiches in the break room? We caught up on the business. Dad, a retired investment banker, asked insightful questions about the technology now. Mom seemed more concerned with how we were doing as individuals than in our corporate success. Your grandmother would be so proud, Dad said suddenly, catching us off guard. She always believed that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. You never told us about her work, I said softly. Because I never understood it, he admitted. It was easier to ignore what I didn't get. Just like with you, Julia. I'm sorry for that. After lunch, Mr. Chin called us to the main lab. There's something you need to see, he said, bringing up a holographic display. We've decoded the last of Richard's hidden files. The display revealed a complete global infrastructure, clean energy systems, advanced medical devices, communication networks reaching the most remote areas. This was their true vision, Mr. Chen explained, not just isolated breakthroughs, but a comprehensive transformation of how technology serves humanity. And now, thanks to Julia's restoration work and Catherine's legal framework, we're finally in a position to implement it. It'll take years, Catherine mused, already jotting down notes. The regulatory hurdles alone. We have time, I smiled. And more importantly, we have each other. That evening, after everyone left, I sat in Grandpa's old workshop chair. The antique shop's front windows still displayed vintage radios and typewriters, maintaining our cover. But now I understood why Grandpa had always smiled when people dismissed it. Sometimes the greatest innovations hide in plain sight, I thought. Sometimes the person they call broken is actually seeing things too clearly. And sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, it's showing them a better way to be right. Catherine joined me, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The quantum team wants to name the new processor series after Grandma, she said. The Eleanor Project. I took the coffee, smiling. He planned all of this, didn't he? Even my gaming addiction? He knew you'd use it against me, knew it would keep our work hidden until the right time. He also knew I'd need to learn humility, she admitted, and that you'd need to learn to stand up for yourself. He played us both. No, I corrected gently. He taught us both. We just had to be ready to learn. Through the window, I saw our parents walking arm in arm to their car, looking more at ease than they had in years. The weight of false expectations had finally lifted, replaced by real pride in what their daughters were accomplishing. The antique shop bell chimed softly in the evening breeze, the same bell that had announced countless customers seeking simple repairs, unaware they were standing in the birthplace of a technological revolution. Some bells, it turns out, ring louder than others, and some inheritances are worth far more than money. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Stay stunned.